Hey friends, welcome to the last part of the SvelteKit series, which is going to be about deploying a full-stack SvelteKit app. We're going to learn a lot in this one from web hosting types, or if you don't care about it, you can just skip to the end, and I'm going to show you how to deploy a SvelteKit project. But at the end of this, we're going to deploy a full-stack SvelteKit blog project that's going to use Prisma, PostgreSQL as the database, which is going to be hosted on Supabase, and we're going to host the app on Vercel. I wanted a real-world example because applications are more complicated than deploying your typical static blog, right? In this project, we're going to have blogs, a dashboard, which is just a mini content management system, so we're going to use server-side rendering, is going to be great. But before that, let's talk about web hosting types. The reason why I want to cover all of this web hosting lore is because I want you to actually understand why I picked these solutions instead of going for some other solutions, and we're going to briefly speed run the history of hosting and what led us to where we are today. But of course you can skip this and just go to the hosting part, which is going to take you 5 minutes probably. Let's talk about cloud hosting. Basically all of hosting is cloud hosting. So you might be familiar with these traditional hosting providers like DigitalOcean, Linode, or Vultr, but I call them specialized cloud providers because they're actually focused on the consumer. So if you go here, you can see they have a really nice site. So they're like focused on individual developers, businesses, and etc. So you can see it's very clear when you go to products, droplets, Kubernetes, and etc. You can pick a virtual private server or shared hosting. So you're going to share CPU, RAM, and etc. with others. You can see managed databases. So basically you know what you get. You also have solutions here like managed WordPress, Magento, WooCommerce, and etc. So they're really aimed at making this as user-friendly as possible. And then you have the second category, which are the titans of infrastructure. They're basically like DigitalOcean, Linode, and these others, but AWS or Google Cloud Provider on Azure are basically the titans of infrastructure. So look at this. Their main difference is they offer 1,000 more services. They have insanely larger infrastructure, and etc. And you need a degree to understand any of it. So if you go, for example, to products, you can scroll for days. So how can you make sense of this, right? And basically this isn't for mere mortals, but this is for enterprise and etc. And this sounds boring, true, but this is important to understand how we got to the next tier of web hosting, which is going to be serverless. So here you have the most popular ones for most people, I think, or newer developers, is going to be serverless or Jamstack. And these are your Vercels, Netlify, Cloudflare pages. So if you go here, immediately here is advertising as a Jamstack platform, and Jamstack platform means a lot to many people, but basically it just means an architecture where you use third-party APIs to stitch together a site instead of hosting everything on a single server. And you have Vercels and etc. And basically, how do you make a Vercel? So let's go back to AWS, right? So AWS has many offerings, and let's say, for example, you want to make this super easy. You make a nice CLI, you make a nice frontend around some of their offerings like AWS Lambda, which is serverless, and what you get a Vercel, that's it. And they also offer you a lot of more beneficial features like continuous integrations. For example, when you push your code up to GitHub, it's automatically going to redeploy and etc. You get nice previews and etc. And that's really the greatest developer experience out of all of them. And then you have this other category that I didn't know the name of, so I named it Full Stack Platform. So basically you might be familiar with Heroku, and Heroku is like Vercel but for the entire stack, right? And it makes it easy one-click deploys for your backend, frontend, etc. But Heroku has fallen out of favor due to recent pricing structure changes, right? But there's other amazing solutions now in this space. You have Railway, which is really easy if you want to just provision a database where you can host full stack. You have render.com, which is also awesome. You have Fly.io, which is also becoming popular. And basically Fly.io is really interesting because it lets you deploy your app across the globe. So as you can see here, you can deploy not just your app, but your data and etc. So this is blazingly fast. And this means that in a lot of cases that server-side rendering can actually beat the speed of static. And this is really awesome if this is something that you're interested in. So you might be asking, all right, if this is really so awesome, then why didn't you pick Fly.io or any other? And this is another great selling point of serverless, because serverless is so cheap because you don't have this server that you manage, right? Like think of a traditional server, it's just a long running process in your task manager or whatever you can imagine, but serverless are just functions which get invoked by some action, right? So for example, if you have an entire server and you only send one newsletter a week, that's really a waste of electricity. But if you're using serverless, it's only going to spin up when you need to send that newsletter, which is really awesome and cheap. This is why they have a lot of these free generous tiers, because they don't actually give you a real server where you can wreak havoc, right? Because the thing is with these sort of sites, Renderfly.io, they actually give you a real server, and this is really dangerous if you make it a free tier for everyone, because people are going to do nefarious things with it. So basically this is just all me rambling about, just to say that these type of services require you mostly to use a credit card just to prevent that abuse. And that's why I really chosen something like Vercel to host the app, and I've chosen Supabase for the database. And of course this is the next tier I want to talk about, because serverless has its own unique set of challenges. You have all of these amazing great serverless databases. You have Supabase, Firebase, Fauna and Hasura, which I haven't tried, but they seem like they're all into GraphQL, if that's something you're interested in. SATA sounds really interesting. You have Upstash for Redis, so you can use that. You have PlanetScale, and then you have MongoDB if you like using MongoDB. I'm really not a fan of Firebase because Firebase is proprietary and locks you in. What is the benefit of something like Supabase is that it uses PostgreSQL. So if Supabase buys the dust or whatever, they change the pricing tiers, it really doesn't matter. You can switch to PlanetScale or whatever else. You can provision another type of SQL database, because we're also going to use Prisma that has many database adapters. So your schema stays the same, because the schema looks more something that looks like TypeScript instead of writing raw SQL or MongoDB even yourself. Alright friends, I'm super excited to show you how simple this is. The only thing you're going to need is a GitHub account, which I have a secret Smurf account here, so you can use GitHub to log into Supabase and to Vercel, and Vercel is going to ask you for permission to your GitHub anyhow, because it has a tight integration with it. So first we're going to create a database, because that takes a minute, and again we're going to use Supabase to provision a PostgreSQL database. We don't really care about any other Supabase features. We're using Prisma and not their JavaScript library. But of course, if you want to use other Supabase features, you don't have to use Prisma. So let's go and create a new project. If you go to app.supabase.com, create a new project. I'm going to name it blog. You can name it whatever you want. And this is the important part. We need to generate this password, and then we need to copy it. I'm just going to create a new tab here, copy the password, don't leak it to anyone. And here you can choose a region close to you. I'm going to pick this, and then you can press free. Simple as that. Let's create a new project, and this is going to take a second, and then it's going to take a minute to provision the database itself. So you can see the project is created, but it's setting up the project. This is a perfect time to set up the project. So here is the example project with some simple instructions. You don't really need to go here. I'm just going to tell you what to do if you're following along, which I hope you're doing. So here inside of an empty project, you're basically going to create a new GitHub repository, and you're going to push this up so you can host it yourself and try it, right? So I'm going to use this command pnpx-degit, which is just going to copy over a GitHub project without the history, and it's really super simple. So I'm going to complete joys of code / SvelteKit deploy. This is the name of the repository. And this dot at the end just means, okay, put it in this exact folder, don't create a new folder. And I'm just going to press enter, and awesome, it's fast like that. Let's install the dependencies. And of course you can use any package manager you want, but I highly encourage you to use pnpm. So this is great. And now if I close the terminal, you should see here is the project. So we need to rename this environment file to environment, and be careful, do not leak this to anyone. This is very important. And this is only required for local development, because later when you host it somewhere on Vercel, you need to enter your environment variable in their dashboard. So here I can open the env, and I already have some example here. And by now this should be done. So our database is provisioned. Awesome. So if we go to project settings, database, and you can see here's the connection string, so you can get this, but we want the connection string for the pooling, because this is going to fix the problem when it comes to using a serverless database. You don't really have to think about it, just copy this string over. We can copy it right here. I hope you have your password, because we're going to take the password, copy it. Let's close this because we don't need it anymore. And now, including brackets, replace this. And this is it, boom, you're done. So let me just really show you inside the Prisma schema. I set it up to use PostgreSQL. You can use any other adapter you want, right? The schema stays the same. It looks like TypeScript. Beautiful, chef's kiss. And you can see here we have something for authentication. Really, it's not important. Here is the post schema itself. So let me just close this. And now I can even close this. And now if you go to your terminal, I'm going to press Ctrl L to clear everything. So now we just want to create the tables from our Prisma schema. And you can run migrate if you're in production. But if you're just prototyping and trying things out, you can say pnpx prisma db push. And now this is going to create the table on Supabase. All right, so let's give it a try and let's see what happens. And now when you go to the table editor, you're going to see here it populated the tables. And here your posts are going to be. You can even edit now. Supabase error out, which is hilarious. But yeah, okay, this is it. You can see here is the database. Also, I want to mention that you can also set up row level security, because right now anyone with the anonymous Prisma key can edit this, but you can look into this if you want. Another thing is that you can run the development server, so you can say npm run dev, and everything should work great. So first time running, now we can go to localhost 5173. You should see everything working. Give it a minute to build everything. You see everything working. We only see the title because we don't have any post. But yeah, this is just the full stack blog app. So you can see here is the blog, here is going to be the search, here is the dashboard. Right now there is nothing here, so we get an error. Maybe I should have done some better error handling, right? But yeah, it's really not important. About, and yeah, this is awesome. And you can even just go here and you can see here where the dashboard was, right? You can register here because you already have the access to the database, but this is boring. Let's host our app on Vercel. And first, let me just close this. I'm going to close everything. And on GitHub, first we need to create a new project. So we're going to create a new repository. I'm just going to name it blog. Let's name it SvelteKit blog. Nothing else you need to do. So you can just go here, create new repository. Don't do anything here. I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-G to enter this Git mode. And I can say initialize repository. So you don't even have to use your terminal if that's spooky to you. So the only thing we have to do here is add everything. And let's just say feature, add project, nothing special. We're going to use this. Sometimes I mix the GUI and terminal however I feel, and this is what I love to do. So I can go here, I can just copy everything. I can just say paste. Let's just do this, and everything is fine because we're going to push an already existing repository. And congrats, now you have your own repository you can host, it's clean, and now we can use Vercel. But let me tell you one thing before we do that, which you should do. We're going to talk about adapters. Let's talk about that first. So how do you host a SvelteKit project, right? SvelteKit has this concept of adapters. By default, if you don't have any adapter specified in the Svelte config, you're going to see, let me just close this. You're going to see here it uses adapter auto. And this basically means when you deploy to a supported platform like Cloudflare, Workers, Netlify, Node, Static, or Vercel, it's going to know what the platform is and is going to use the right adapter. But you can, of course, do it yourself. You can go here, which Vercel recommends. So let's do that. PNPM development, Svelte.js adapter Vercel. Let's do that. And we just need to replace that. And that's it. Okay, so now we can go here, Vercel. Here is a good tip I have for you. So before you deploy to Vercel, just run pnpm run build. And this is going to expose any potential errors like TypeScript errors, because those are going to error out when you deploy your project. So if you catch anything here, it's going to save you so much time from having to redeploy constantly your app because of some silly errors, right? And you can see everything looks great. This is the same output that's going to be on Vercel, but it's not really the same. And then when you're done with this, you can say pnpm run preview. And if you're really wondering how do I know all these commands, just go to your package.json. You can always find the scripts here for testing and etc. They're all here. So this is going to open it on port 4173 instead of 5. You can go here. You can see, all right, not Brave Search. Nice one. You can just go here, 5173. And okay, you see everything works. Okay, this is internal error, but it's because we output it using build. This is not the development server. So don't freak out, okay? So now let me show you how easy this is. Let me just stop all of this. I'm just going to exit. And now inside of the Vercel dashboard, you just have to go create new project. And this is going to load your repository. If you're doing this for the first time, it's going to ask you for the permission to your GitHub. Just say yes. And then we can just select the repository. Because I'm on my legendary Smurf account, I only have one repository. So I can say import blog. And now here, it already knows this is SvelteKit because it's already pre-configured for you. Now the only thing you have to do is populate the environment variable here. So let me just see. I need to open the sidebar. You can see build and output settings. You don't really have to change anything here because you have the preset here. So it's with build, public, and you don't have to care about this. Okay, so now we care about this. So now we just need to give it a name. It's going to be database URL. And now we just need to copy this connection string. Let me do this. Press add before you click deploy on accident, but you can add it after, right? Because you can use this dashboard or whatever. So now it's added, and that's basically it. So let me just collapse this, and now I can press deploy. And let me also close this tab. And now this is going to take under a minute. And another thing I want to mention is that if this is the first time you're doing this, never be afraid of the build output. This might look spooky, but this is the same thing we did here in the terminal, right? Same thing as you run pnpm or npm run build. This is the same output, but it's using someone else's computer, right? So if you ever get an error, don't freak out. It's just running the command. Just stay calm, read the error, maybe Google it, maybe it's something obvious, you're doing something crazy, right? If you remember, this is like exactly the same like we did it here. Everything looks great, and it's just doing its thing, closing to the end. Let's see, it's already done. Okay, so this is it, no errors, great. This is how simple that was. Let me just scroll up, there's a lot. Oh, it's actually not done, but yeah, it's going to be soon. And the next time is going to be even faster. All right, so now we get congratulations, but let's continue to the dashboard. So also Vercel gives you a nice name for a preview, but you can also look at other deployments. So here we see our site is live. So we can go to the deployment right here, or you can change other settings like your node version if you want. All right, so let's see. Oh, I clicked the deployment on accident. I want to click on domains. Okay, let's go to the domain. So let's see what's going on. So we have latest posts, and now when we go to the dashboard, since you don't have an account, right, we can go register. I'm going to say test 1, 2, 3, 4, and it should create a new account on Supabase, right? And we already have a page hosted. And if you want to enter your domain, you can go here, and somewhere under settings, there is an option for domains and etc. All right, so let's see what it's complaining about. And if you ever get an error, you can go to your deployments, and you can go here, I think, and then you can see logs, but you can also check it for functions. You can see if something is wrong here, but I don't think anything should be wrong here. So let me just check what is going on here. Okay, I don't know what happened now, but we are already logged in. And as we can go to Supabase, let's see, user. You can see here is the user. And then we can go here, we can create a new post. And let's say Bob Ross Ipsum, of course. Let's go here and let's add some happy little trees, like a post. And then we can say happy little trees, or whatever else title you want to give it. Happy little trees. Happy little trees. And then let's just paste this text. I'm going to select as published. Let's submit it. This is going to be added to our database. And you can see, despite this being server-side rendered, this is really fast. And if we go here, let me just see. This should work. Actually, I'm really curious. Huh, interesting. Must be something going on with Vercel, because I actually do not experience this. Basically, this is going to work 100%. You go to the blog dashboard, you can see here are all your posts. You can search happy little trees. We only have one post. And let me just see about blog. And here it is. So basically, maybe this is just so new that things need to settle down. Just give it a minute. Don't panic, right? Things are going to work. And now you can share this with your friends or whoever you want. And you can log out, and basically this is it. Now you've learned how to host a full stack project using SvelteKit. We use Supabase to provision the PostgreSQL database, and of course then we deploy the entire project on Vercel. In the next section, I'm going to show you how we can optimize your site further using cache headers. Alright friends, so how do we make our site even more awesome? I'm not sure if you noticed it, I probably mentioned it, but we're using server-side rendering. That means none of this is static, but you can see our site is blazingly fast. So how is that possible? Well, basically that server-side rendering is slow is a misconception. What is expensive with server-side rendering isn't the creation of the HTML page or whatever, but it's the data you're trying to fetch, because fetching is expensive if the data is further away from you. But how a static site works, for example, if I go here, it uses a CDN or a content delivery network, which are just servers across the globe that literally just take the assets from where you're hosting this, so HTML, video, images, and etc., and they put it closer to you. So for example, if you're here and you request some image for my blog, then you're going to get this from this CDN instead of here. And this is why static sites are so fast. But then imagine that if you have some data, like here, in this case, we're using Supabase, right? And this is here in Frankfurt, somewhere in Germany, right? And this is fast for me, but it might be not fast for you over here or here. What people are trying to solve this problem with is edge computing, which is basically the same concept as CDN, but it's using the edge to move the data closer to the user. We're not going to use edge today, but we're going to use some simple HTTP caching. Basically, we can just set cache control headers for a certain duration, which means if 1,000 people visit your page, you're not going to create 1,000 requests doing the same work on the server, but the CDN is going to be like, oh, I have this cached already, I can just serve you this resource. And then, for example, if an hour passed, then it's going to get it from the server again. And this is really simple but powerful. And really, cache control headers aren't anything spooky. So if I go here in the post, here I have this section where I show you how you can set cache control headers. And another thing I like about this is that you have to think about the content on your site. So you can optimize it and you can do whatever you want. Basically, it gives you a lot more power, freedom, and flexibility. And if you want to learn more about cache control headers, you can go to MDN. Here you have some descriptions. They aren't very useful, to be honest, but you learn a couple of these things and then you're set. So for example, if we set max age, this just means, okay, I don't want you to cache this to the disk. Then you have this directive as max age, and this tells a share cache, which is a CDN, a content delivery network. It tells it how much to cache this resource. And this is 60 times 60, so this is going to be 1 hour because 60 seconds times 60 minutes. So if I go to the blog here, let's see, we have the latest post, right? And then like thinking, okay, how often do I want to refresh this, right? And maybe you can put an hour because this really isn't that important. And then we have an RSS here, which you can also cache for an hour because why would you need to ask the server every second for this, right? This is like, it's a waste of electricity. And then you have some other things. If you go to the blog here, you have a search, and this just grabs the post, and here I have some client JavaScript that just filters through them, so this is nothing special. And just ask yourself, like, how important is this, right? Maybe we can also cache this for an hour because it's not important. And then for the dashboard, of course, that gives us this internal error for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on, but we can just ignore it for now. In here, you can be like, okay, I don't want to cache anything that's dynamic, that's not the same, right? Because I want the freshest data always, and it's not really often used or public facing. And then we have an interesting thing like an about, which we can pre-render using page options in SvelteKit, and we can even disable JavaScript by disabling client-side routing, which I'm going to show you how. And this is really awesome. All right, so now that we discussed this strategy, another thing probably I should mention is that newsletter, I don't really have any logic here, but you might be thinking if you look at this newsletter, okay, this isn't changing, we can just pre-render it, but you can't because pre-rendering isn't going to work if you use SvelteKit form actions because they require a server. So we're just going to leave this alone, we really don't care about this. All right, so let me just use this post so I don't mistype anything and have some silly errors. So we just discussed the strategy, what we want to do, and I'm just going to use this to set the cache control headers. So now we're going to go to source, routes, and now we can set the cache control header inside the plus page of server TS file. So here is one for the route, and here it is. So here is where you get the publish post. And really, we just need to destructure set headers from here, and that's how simple this is. So now we can say set headers, and you can set any header you want. You can say X, and then you can say, I'm going to give it to you. And then you can specify cache control headers if you want, which is the thing we want. So you can say cache control. And again, I also prefer to use this format like this, so we actually know the time. So we can say max age 0, that's never going to change. And then we can say S max age, which this is really sometimes easy to get wrong. And then let's just use this. And I like to use this format, but you can use an hour or whatever else you want, but you can just use JavaScript for some easy maths. Okay, so we can save this, and then we have the blog route, so we can go to the blog route as we discussed it, and let's also cache this for an hour, and let's just copy this part over, so you don't have to repeat ourselves. So we can go to the blog, so we have the blog, so here is the search for the site, right? If we go here, see blog, it's not cooperating today with me, let me just see what's going on. Just going to log in again, see what's going on. But yeah, I hope this works much better for you because yeah, apparently there are some difficulties. But yeah, we can just ignore it for now. But we can just go here to the page server, and let me just go here. I'm just going to close this. And let me just close the sidebar. I'm going to copy over. You don't really need this. We just need to get the headers. So you can say set headers. And now we can do this like I have it in the post, right? If you look at here, here is the same thing. So this is going to be an hour, this is going to be an hour, So for the post itself, we really want that to always be fresh. So when we fix a typo or something, we just want it to be immediately reflected. So we can set this to 1 minute. So let's go here to the blog slug. You can go here. Again, same thing. You can copy this over. You can just go here. You can say set headers. And then go here. And just set it to 60 seconds. You don't even have to do anything special here. And I'm also going to need... see, params. Yeah, so let's not mess that up. And then another one I think is the RSS. So let me just see. Yeah, it's the RSS. And this is interesting because this is at a root. So if I go here, where is the RSS? Here it is. So here is something different because I'm using a standalone endpoint. I'm already returning a new response, which is content type. And then we just need to do the same thing. So we can just go here. You can say, hey, cache this also on the CDN. You can say max age 0, s max age, and then you can set it to an hour, or you can set it to whatever you want. And also, you don't have to just use these values. You have access to JavaScript, right? So you can make this conditional. If you have a post that's older than 7 days, you can look at the publish time. You can say, okay, if this post is older than 7 days, I'm probably not going to edit it often, so cache it forever. And then to bust the cache, you can just redeploy to Vercel, or you can use a webhook. So let me just look at the about page. When we're here we're going to use SvelteKit page options. So let's say, for example, I'm going to collapse everything just so you know where we are. So for example, in routes, about, I can just create page server TS file. See what I created here. So you can say export const, and now if you say pre-render, this is just going to build a HTML page in advance, and we can also disable the client router, so this is not going to have any JavaScript at all because we don't need it for an about page, and it's going to get rarely viewed anyhow. So we can say client-side rendering false. Alright, awesome. So basically now we're done, and now we can push the changes. Press Ctrl-Shift-G, I can go here, and we can just add this. Let me just add this. You can say feature and Vercel adapter, or actually it's not a feature. We can say build, really doesn't matter. Just commit. And then we can say feature cache. Let's add all of these. Say commit. And then we can say sync. So now we're going to see something beautiful. If I refresh this, you're going to see here is going to push something in your commits. And now Vercel, since it's hooked into this, you go to Vercel dashboard, is going to automatically redeploy. So this is going to also take under a minute. I'm going to close all of this. And now our cache is going to work. So give this a second. All right, and this time it's a lot faster. So we can go here and even have a new URL for that if you want. And I hope this time we have more luck and less errors. Unlucky, I know, but it is how it is. So this is another great thing, that even if you have a branch in your repository, you can push that up before you push it to main, and you can get a preview deployed to make sure you didn't mess something up on Vercel, which you should always do. And then we can just open the link, which is the link for this preview deploy. And let's see, things are already looking a lot better. So let's see, just log in, it should take a second. And you can see it here. So let's see our caching in play. So when we open the network tab, so the first thing I expect is we're going to get a cache miss, because what I've done right now is I've just used client-side navigation, right? And your data can also get cached this way, but it doesn't really matter. How someone is going to open your link, they're going to go directly to that link, right? So first time we're going to get a miss because it didn't prime the cache. So let's reset it. And actually, maybe I'm also unlucky. Let me just see. Going to do this, and then let's just open this, and we can see age 0, so it just started. And when we go here to these headers, we can see it's a miss. And now when we refresh this, instead of asking the server, is going to pull this from the CDN. So let's refresh this, and you already seen how fast this was and how awesome is this. And this even isn't using static site generation, right? We're using server-side rendering with some clever caching. You can see age 14. And now, when a minute passes, this is going to reset. So let me just try my luck if I can go to the dashboard. Let me just make some changes here if I can. I'm just going to give it exclamation marks. Let's save it, submit it, and let's go to the blog. And now you can see 44. And now, no matter how many times a refresh is going to be cached. How awesome is this? Beautiful. It's just using web standards, right? So here we say it's 54. We set it to 60 seconds, right? 1 minute. So let's see. Are we close? Of course, giving us this error. But now, let me just go here. Yeah, you can see this is updated. So now, again, this timer is going to start running. And beautiful. This is it. Some basic caching using the web platform. And if you'd like to support me, you can like and subscribe and find my Patreon in the description. Thank you for watching and catch you in the next one. Peace!